going live, and apparently we are live. Hello, Sean. Greetings. Could you give us a wee? Can you hear me? Okay, sir. How's it going? It's nice to see you, and thanks for joining us. Oh, I've got. Excuse me, 1 second. I've got dogs going in and out. Are you going to sit down, big lad? Yeah. Are you okay? Sorry about that. Let me see. I think we're all good here. Let me just check if you. Can you hear me? Okay, there, Sean. Oh, we've got nobody here. I think we've got a cut off. And let's just double check. Anyway, Sean, loud and clear. Thank you very much, Sean. How's it going, sir? Thanks everybody for joining us tonight. Hope you're all well. And yeah, it's a horrible night here. Very stormy, very wet, and very cloudy and miserable. Just been out with the dogs about half an hour ago and got soaked. And excuse me, my dog does one minute. There we go, Holly. I'll let you get on top. There you go, pet. That's a good one. There she goes. Sorry about that, folks. Oh, there we go. That should be me settled. And right, I suppose. Well, tonight then. Tonight's the setup episode really for the Kwisatz Haderach, and we had a good, just a sort of about a 15-minute program there, I think. Just running through the general setup of the Kwisatz Haderach, what it is and what it might be. And we have a number of different characters who are, of course, Kwisatz Haderachs in the Dune series. And what I suppose as we saw there, we have a couple of people who are described as failed Kwisatz Haderachs, that they almost didn't quite make it. So you want to sit down, big lad? Go on, up you go. So as usual, if anybody's got any questions for me in regards to the Kwisatz Haderach, fire away, or in regards to Dune or the Dune movie or anything at all science fiction as usual. And who knows where our threads will take us tonight. I think, as we've said, we keep finding each night as we have a particular topic to talk about. And the very nature of Dune itself helps us, takes us on all these different intertwined paths and themes. So it's very easy to head off from one direction into another topic altogether. So as I said, we have a number of characters there within the Dune series that are Kwisatz Haderachs. And we're going to look at 3 of them, I think. Sorry, 4. Let me just check. We're going to look at Leto II, Paul Atreides, Miles Tegg, and the final Duncan Idaho Gola. So we're going to look at 4 of them in the following 4 episodes in detail. And that's why this episode isn't so long. It's really just setting up the concept of the Kwisatz Haderach for you. And again, we'll go into that a lot more in detail, I suppose, in some aspects of that in the hero chapter. Hello, Babs. Thanks very much for joining us. Hope you're keeping well. We're just saying, as usual, if you've got any questions or comments, fire them away, and I'll do my best to either answer them or give you an opinion if I can. So there we go. We're just saying it's very stormy here tonight. So yeah, we're going to look at 4 Kwisatz Haderachs and in the following 4 episodes. And it's a very interesting concept. And I think even at a certain point, we'll get into the language and look at the variations of the term and so on. And the Kwisatz Haderach sort of is a shortening of the way. And it has a couple of different meanings, I suppose. But in the first sense, it has something to do with, I suppose, what you would call bilocation. And in the other sense, it's a kind of aspect of all heroes, the traditional type of heroes, I suppose, that the hero is often fundamentally associated with death and is a bridge between 2 points, I suppose. Let me see. So, and also we have that connection with the pre-Erewhonians, this race of beings who develop prescience in the Samuel Butler story. So just another one of those things that gives us a nice link to Butler. Sean says, Paul is usually described as 1 generation early, but I'd forgot that he considered him something else, not failed, but perhaps almost or close enough, not the Kwisatz Haderach that was expected. Yeah, I suppose just some descriptions, I suppose. But yeah, what is a failed Kwisatz Haderach, or in that case, potential, maybe Kwisatz Haderach. I think Hazimir Fenring is a failed Kwisatz Haderach because I believe he's a genetic mule. Um, or well, in that sense that whatever it is that's required of the Kwisatz Haderach, I think he's sterile in that sense. I think there's something to do with his genes. But yeah, we get a few conflicting statements there, Sean, don't we? And we put them up with the quotations. You're the Kwisatz Haderach. I'm not the Kwisatz Haderach. I'm something else. And then I actually am the Kwisatz Haderach. So you can easily see how it is, or how easy it is to get confused over the thing. It's a wonderful idea, I think. And of course, the something unexpected is that what's expected of the Kwisatz Haderach is the ability to look back through the male genetic line by the Bene Gesserit. But of course, the opposite of that, he has that, but he can look so far forward. And Paul's prescience isn't complete, but it's almost total as it sort of develops with him. And prescience is a thing that's about in the Dune universe. It's something that people have in a limited degree. Certainly, the Guild have it to a limited degree. Pardon me. I'll try and get better at clearing my throat in a more gentle way. I'm one of those people who's, as I said, I'm very loud, but I can't cough or blow my nose quietly. So apologies to you all. And I should probably just drink more as I talk so much. So I don't know about your thoughts on the Kwisatz Haderach or any of the particular Kwisatz Haderach. And I think Hazimir Fenring is a very interesting character and presented as this moment and this individual who could be potentially very, very deadly to everything that Paul sees, and his choice to step back is very interesting. And I absolutely kind of appalled at how underused that character was later on. I mean, I think you could have had, Hazimir Fenring would have been an interesting character to keep around and look at more in detail. He's quite an interesting character in the Dune series, in the original Dune novel, and he's very much we get quite get an excellent impression of him, that he's just someone that you wouldn't notice, just a sort of kind of quiet type serpentine man, I suppose. But he's incredibly powerful. The sense that he's more Machiavellian, I suppose, in kind of in a mental way, but the sense that he's physically incredibly dangerous is there as well. And of course, he's been trained by his Bene Gesserit wife, so I think he's pretty interesting. And he is a minor character who ends up being incredibly important right near the end, and then kind of just no, I'll just step aside. And whether that's there's something that he sees at that moment as well, in himself, that possibly he's able to defeat Paul, but he doesn't. I'll tell you what Count Hazimir Fenring reminds me of in Dune is he reminds me of a character from the Lord of the Rings. And the character I'm talking about is Faramir. I don't know if any of you guys are Lord of the Rings fans or not. Talking about the books, I suppose. But Faramir is the one person in Lord of the Rings who's offered the ring. Yeah, don't want it. No thanks. And it's not that he doesn't have a sort of struggle with it, but he's very easily able to put it aside, if you see what I mean. And that moment for Fenring at the end, there's something of that sense of power. Just no, it's okay. I'm fine. I don't want it. There's something that reminds me of Faramir from the Lord of the Rings novels. I don't know if you'd agree with me. It's just in that sense is the one character who ultimately power's not that attractive to, I suppose. And he's a person who's probably arguably second most powerful person in the universe after the Emperor, if you consider the Emperor powerful. So I don't know. I think he's a really interesting character, guys. And the whole one generation early, etc. Yeah. And of course, just funny enough, I was reading Dune again. As you guys know, I'm reading the first book at the minute, and I kind of tore through it a wee bit last night and got up to, and I had forgot that as much as the Atreides kind of desire an absolute a sort of link to the throne, I'd forgotten that the Harkonnens were after the throne as well. I thought it was something that was potentially out of their reach, and just the whole Baron thinking about it won't be me that sits on the throne, and maybe it will be Raban, but maybe Fade. And again, Fade is possibly that Harkonnen that we suspect should have been bred with an Atreides daughter to create a Kwisatz Haderach. Which is quite interesting, I suppose. So I don't know what you guys think, or if you've got a particular favourite Kwisatz Haderach. But as I said, the term itself is quite interesting, and it's very much got a sort of religious connotation. And you'll find it's a sort of thing that appears in quite old stories and so on. It's quite common, and it's an interesting concept. Whenever we chat a little bit, I think that I saw my son was on a wee bit there chatting, and I missed a bit of the episode, and I tend to use these to refresh my memory. But we do go into, in a sense, well, I think it's in the hero chapter actually, that the idea of bilocation and what a Kwisatz Haderach is, what a Messiah is. We explore those terms quite fully. Excuse me. And then of course I said our next episode is on Leto II, I think. And as they were following the thread of evolution within Dune, both machine and to individuals and people. So Sean says, was there any reason why Fade never approached becoming a Kwisatz Haderach, since he's a precursor as much as Paul is? Yeah, I don't think so. It's I think it's the way that probably something to do with that the daughter hasn't been born. If you see what I mean, Sean, that obviously at the point of the action when Dune begins, I think Paul is 15. So Jessica's decision to give birth to Paul occurred 15 years prior to the action. And I would say at that point, understanding that Paul's male, that's the point where the Bene Gesserit's plan has kind of fallen apart in terms of the lines, I suppose, that they're not getting quite the set of genes that they want. And it's interesting that it has to be, I suppose, a particular male and female pairing is what they're after. But I'd imagine that doesn't happen because Paul is born. Otherwise, I would quite imagine that the Bene Gesserit would be sowing. It's such an important thing to them that they would certainly be sowing the seeds of a wedding between the Harkonnen and the Atreides. Probably from the point of a female child being born if Phaedroth was male. So just one of those things that we can theorize about, I suppose. But yeah, so that's the thing. I suppose ultimately one of those interesting things in Dune is you ask, why does it take the Bene Gesserit 15 years to come and chastise Jessica? Surely they would have. You get the sense that conversation between Jessica and Gaius Helena Mohiam is the first time that they've had a natter about it, and that she's been on Caladan for 15 years. I understand there's a whole bunch of prequels, guys. So I have no idea what I understand that there's all sorts happening there. So maybe once again, Brian Herbert and Kevin J. Anderson have already answered that. I'm always speculating, I suppose, from the point of view of the 6 books of Frank Herbert's Dune. But yes, so yeah, good point. Fade should, and I think Fade is presented as a deadly opponent for Paul. But I suppose the point is at that point in the action in Dune, you actually really do understand that Casimir Fenrig would be a much more dangerous opponent to Paul. And Casimir is much older. He's a very experienced man, I suppose. Sean says, I think at first they thought Paul was inconsequential until their prescience pointed to Paul in adolescence having a disruptive influence. Yeah. Well, I suppose that's maybe the whole point about the prescience thing. The interesting thing about the prescience, I suppose, is if you actually do have a good think about it in the Dune series, it really does break down logically quite bad. I suppose, and it depends on nobody. Paul doesn't see the God Emperor in his prescience, does he? I think because he's going to be there. So there's little bits, and then prescience is kind of presented as it's not absolute, um, which is kind of a hard thing to understand, because it's either, if it's not absolute, then how can it be pre-knowledge in that sense of the word? That if it might not happen, or that it's maybe knowledge of nexuses, or nexus points, and I think Paul sees a few of these. Yeah, so it's interesting that Paul is, I'm not the Kwisatz Haderach, I am the Kwisatz Haderach, but he's something more. And can I ask you guys, do you know do you get what the point of the Kwisatz Haderach breeding program actually is for the Bene Gesserit? Why it's not just to get the male line, excuse me, but there is a point to the whole thing, and it's to do with whenever Paul says, we had the quotation there, right? One of the first things about the Gom Jabbar, and I think Paul says Kwisatz Haderach. What's that? Gom Jabbar, and he's correct. So the whole point is, what a Gom Jabbar is, the high-handed enemy, and it's a crucible test, if you like. So in a sense, the Kwisatz Haderach is an enemy. To who, I suppose, but to humanity. And I think that the point of particularly going after certain breed, they talk about, we may lose both lines now, is that ultimately the point of the Bene Gesserit's breeding program to create a Kwisatz Haderach is, Frank June talks about the stagnation of the human race, and it's to renew the human race by war. The only point is that they don't control it, I think. A whole bunch of comments here, so we'll just go to that a wee bit. That's just the catch up. Chris Gibson's here. Hi, Chris. Sean, just before that, I think at first they thought Paul was inconsequential until the prescience pointed to Paul in adolescence having a disruptive influence. Yeah, sorry, my timeline thing is running up and down here. Let me just. There we go. Sorry. So Chris says, does the Emperor's plan to remove the Atreides line with the aid of the Harkonnens affect the Bene Gesserit plan? How much of the plan is known to them? Well, that's a very good question, Chris. Let me just think about it. Does the Emperor's plan to remove the Atreides line with the aid of affect the Bene Gesserit plan? Yes, absolutely. And I think that's the Reverend Mother Gaius Hal Mohim kind of suggests that Leto's not a chance, and the whole point about losing these bloodlines is this is out of their control. How much of the plan was known to them? Well, that's a good point. I would imagine that the Bene Gesserit were well informed about the Emperor's plan. Their ability to overtly do anything about it, however, I think is something that would bring them out of the shadows, if you see what I mean. And the Bene Gesserit don't operate that way. And in particular, I'd argue that the Bene Gesserit have patience, and they have I would say that they have other bloodlines. But you get the real sense, as I said, that this is the two families that they've been focusing on. And the point, I suppose, is regardless of this, the Bene Gesserit plan, looking at these two families, maybe it's coming a generation early, as we pointed out. But the whole point is that whoever's that next generation is most likely, whether it be a Harkonnen or an Atreides Kwisatz Haderach, to sit on the throne. And the whole point about the Kwisatz Haderach was it was meant to be something that they control. And I think that's the ultimate. There's a political power play there, and it is the way that the Bene Gesserit operate. I think. I think that's the goal, to control the throne and then control the lineage that way. And they have their Kwisatz Haderach, and then they can renew the human race through war, without risk to themselves. That's kind of how I run it out in my head. I don't know what you guys think about it. Sean, just to catch up again, let's see. Well, that's a really good question, Chris. Thank you very much. It's interesting whatever you flesh out. Whenever you start to flesh out ideas from the book, we can really have a good old think about them, and we don't always see anything, so we have to do a wee bit of speculation. But I think all one of the appendices is on Bene Gesserit motives, and we learn that's where we learn a lot about them and the religion of the Dune universe. Let's see. Sean says, right, that's the disruptive aspect of Paul. If it was the offspring of Fade and an Atreides daughter, the nature of that one would be one they can control. Also, they would be prepared to control him. Yeah, as I said, you get the instinct that, Paul would have been born 15 years. If the daughter had been born, it would have been 15 years in the past of the action of Dune. So I think Bene Gesserit planning, again, they're long-term thinkers. Within the Dune series, like Kynes is. Excuse me. And one of the points I think that we often say that Herbert's notions are, in Dune, is that people's thinking isn't long-term enough, nowhere near in scale. And ultimately, the fault of the Bene Gesserit within the breeding program is that they do not understand, once again, one of these cyclical motifs in Dune, that what they do will affect them. And they often don't factor in, well, as much as I think they're careful, they don't factor how things, and nobody does this in the Dune universe. They don't factor how things will affect their evolution, I think, and fundamentally change them as a people. Sean says, "Oh, that's a great insight. Atreides and Harkonnen are fighting for the throne, but it's intended that their joint offspring would actually be the one on." Absolutely. And do you know what, Sean? I just kind of got smacked in the face with that last night as I was rereading Dune, and I'm at that bit where it's the Baron, where he's trying to get Thufir away from the Sardaukar, and all of his motivations come out there, and absolutely, the Harkonnens are making a dash for the throne there. And their thinking's a little bit long term, but again, nowhere near long term enough. The whole point is the Harkonnen and the Atreides are able to deal with, the Harkonnen and the Emperor are able to deal with the Atreides simply because of wealth, and it's the Harkonnens' wealth that they've got more money, they can spend it on more troops and stuff. Excuse me. I'll get a wee sip here. My mouth's very dry. David says, here to listen. Only one thumb for questions. So evening, everyone. Hi, David. Love the show. Thanks. Oh, thank you very much, David. Nice for you to join us. We're nattering away about the Kwisatz Haderach, and we kind of ended up on the Bene Gesserit breeding program there. But thanks very much for joining us. Keith says, hi, Keith. The Bene Gesserit probably thought it was impossible that this unplanned meal had a chance at actually becoming the Kwisatz Haderach and didn't bother to prepare to control him. And as I said, ultimately, how would they control the throne? With breeding, sexual imprinting, truth, saying, all of the Bene Gesserit skills are, I think, their motivations are very much. And as I said, that's why I think it's the particular two families. You have to assume that there's multiple bloodlines and breeding lines within the Bene Gesserit plan. And again, it's particularly I suppose families that were idealistically meant to be particularly old in terms of human history. So they probably did give it. It's all about what they didn't consider, I think. But it does actually make the Dune is quite it's sometimes called a Byzantine intrigue. I've used that term myself, but it's a well used one when referring to Dune. And I would argue it's got a lot of Machiavellian style politicking, and it's in terms of the book style, it's quite a bit of adventure. It's the science fiction, obviously, but there is a political layer to it, and the whole, again, that's the politicking in Dune is plans within plans within plans. It's and within plans, the level of deceit, etc. And I think that there is intrigue, and again, that we're often given insight into it or foreknowledge. Um, it's one of the things that I really like about it. And then, as I said, that I think that Dune Messiah as a book gears heavily into that kind of intrigue, and it really is looking at the systems as well that develop around Paul Atreides as Emperor. But I think there's some plans inside of that too. Absolutely, ever repeating circles, I suppose, is a common motif. It is that spiral of and iteration of repetitive themes that are designed to slam the same message. See it, slam the same message into you without ramming it down your throat. But the great thing about Herbert is, I suppose, if you think about it from an education point of view, repetition is a great major tool in education. And hello, Vintage Stereo, how are you? And that the less if he's trying to teach you a lesson about how dangerous, heroes of a certain type, an elevated hero is to society, he wants to keep showing you that. But I think Frank likes to show you that it'll always get worse, and it does always get worse. Can you compare God Emperor and Heretics of Dune to someone that had read the God Emperor and now it's a bit hard to get into tune with the next book? I will have a go, Vintage. As I was saying the other night, Chapter House and Heretics are probably the two books least fresh in my memory. But saying that, it's getting a good jog at the minute. But I would say, yeah, the shift. Can you compare God Emperor and Heretics to someone that had read God Emperor, and now it's a bit hard to get in tune with the next book? Right. Okay. Well, I think God Emperor is a cracking book. We get to explore, I suppose, the political vacuum that occurs, or the power plays, I suppose, that occur after his four deaths, if you like, and how the Dune universe changes, and we get we're starting to get a setup with Heretics and Chapter House. I suppose the main focus goes to the Bene Gesserit as an organization within these books. And I would say to that, if you just read God Emperor, and now it's a bit hard to get in tune with the next book, a lot of the lessons that the God Emperor sort of lays down are being learned. I think the Bene Gesserit in this are trying to figure out what the hell's going on with the God Emperor and his legacy. And they've also got they're investigating, I suppose, the Duncan, Idaho Golas, the impact of the technology that's hit Dune, and of course we have new dangers in Dune and new branches of evolutionary danger, both machine and human. So with the honored mattress, they get wee bit sexy, and the sex is a bit strange, but it's to do with, I suppose, some of the Pranabindu techniques that the Bene Gesserit use, particularly sexual imprinting. And if we understand that the problems that evolved out of the first Dune series, first Dune trilogy, maybe up to the God Emperor, those problems are being amplified, but you don't have an obvious hero around, I think. And the attempt there again, so we're starting to get this attempt to create one, and I think we have particularly we have the two Kwisatz Haderachs within those books are new evolutions. One is the Duncan Idaho Gola, and the other one is Miles Tegg. So I would say that if you're new to Heretics, stick with it, because there's absolutely some cracking characters coming up. And if you like the Dune series, for the characters, etc., and it takes it and elevates it to another level. And unfortunately, you're not, if you get through Chapter House, isn't it, I think the last one, it's more complex than that. I know, but goodness gracious, they're all complex. But I would definitely give it a go. It's yeah, again, more plans, more of what you expect within the Dune universe, I suppose. Plans within plans within plans. But we really get to see the internal workings of the Bene Gesserit. So I often describe, I think most people would happily call these two books the Bene Gesserit. So the focus really shifts to them. And I think we're gearing up within those two books we get a couple of evolutions, more of the Kwisatz Haderach, and we're heading to the ultimate one, I think. And we're also, it's really kind of setting up ultimately like a lot of these books, I suppose we have that battle at the end of the universe kind of thing. I think it was going to run to set it up, and we would have our ultimate Kwisatz Haderach and our Frank's final lesson on the hero, whatever it may have been. As I said, there is a conclusion to the Dune universe with Hunters of Dune and Sandworms of Dune, isn't it? By Brian Herbert and Kevin J. Anderson. But I often think I'm in two camps about what Frank would have done, and I either think that he would have made Duncan your kind of stereotypical kind of hero that we all want. He would have given you a heroic end to Dune. Or the other camp is that if these books are cyclical patterns and reiterations of careful, I'm warning you, told you so, here, could it get worse? Yes. Careful, warning you, told you so, can it get worse? Yes. Then personally, sometimes I think then that whoever or whatever the last Kwisatz Haderach is going to be, if it's Duncan Idaho, then I think he possibly could have had him being something much worse. But at the same time, all of the monsters in the Dune universe are there are heroes. I think you have to love the God Emperor, and you have to kind of love Paul Atreides. So that's the whole point about it. You've got to question why you root for these people. There's a conflict, and there should be a conflict for the reader, and that's really the comment on the hero. And the hero evolves as much as humans and machines do. But there's a lot. There's so much to it. But I would just say if just pile into it, get on with it, if you know what I mean. Because I think these books, once you start them, then I think they're very good. Heretics of Judas is more complex, and that says Vintage there. All of the book, yeah, I was differentiating the other day, Vintage, between complex and complicated. So I don't think the Dune books are complicated to read. I think there's complexities within the story, but I think they're quite. I'm reading Dune myself again. I think it's an easy read. Again, if you're not used to the terminology, there's a perfectly good sort of lexicon at the back. Did you talk about the upcoming movie? Your thoughts? I think it'll be very cinematic, not in a good sense. We've been chatting on and off about it each night, Vintage, I suppose. We've had somebody, and it was Caron who's actually seen the film, and we'd asked a couple of wee questions, but I think we're all on the countdown now. It's about 21, 22 days here. So, and as much as I think we were saying, if you haven't read the Dune novels, I think most of us have. So it's kind of hard to spoil it for us. It's more about what you see, what you don't see, and what's been changed, I think. My thoughts on it are basically there's not that many IMAX cinemas in Ireland. So that's out there, no chance. And then at the minute we have a bit of bother with social distancing in the cinemas. I'm going to look into this and check in with my local cinema and see if they're following government advice or if they're maintaining common sense. But I think it's kind of funny to film something for a type of screen that's not common. If you see what I mean. So those who get to see it on IMAX get one experience and everybody else gets another. But I'm looking forward to it. I understand there's some sensibilities and etc. And it has that kind of Lawrence. I think even the film is in the same area as Lawrence of Arabia or something like that. So I'm looking forward to it. I think that Dune is very hard to film and adapt to. I don't think adapt for cinema. I think it's a very detailed world, and Arrakis is the educator, I think, in it, and we're fully immersed as readers. So to get some kind of, and I understand a lot of people are talking about it as an experience. To get some sense of Arrakis as an experience is what you get from the books, I think, and Arrakis as a planet is your educator should be your educator on ecology from Herbert's point of view. So I'm looking forward to seeing it. And I actually, to be honest with you, there was a wee clip and I watched it on normal screen, pardon me, of the film that came out very, very early, and I just thought, that's an awful long time to show a bit of rolling sand. If this was it's a trailer, what are they just showing you rolling sand? I looked at it again later and couldn't realize that there was actually ornithopters on them, and I couldn't see. So I understand that, it could well be very much advantageous to see it on a big screen. But I'm looking forward to seeing it. And as I said, we're counting down. and I'm happy to keep an open mind. As I said, I think my main interest in it, Vintage, is the ecological message, because I am getting a sense that the ecological message that the film is putting out, and the people that who kind of have worked on it, and we're just going to say that the people who work on a film think in a systemic way. I think they're putting out a systemic ecology message, which is the wrong one. I'm thinking that they're a wee bit out of alignment with Herbert's ecology message. And I think the way they're looking at the book is a product of, I think very inaccurately they're talking about the ecology lesson in Dune because it is a long-term lesson. And to say that Dune is a product of the 1960s is actually incorrect. Dune's a product of the 1950s to the 1980s. It's a set of books written over decades, and it is a product of not a very particular time and place. And it evolves, and Frank Herbert evolves as a human being in its thinking. So I'm curious to see about its ecological message, but I'm hoping that we get to see, as I said, a lot of the characters aren't fleshed out too much in the books, and part of the fun of the David Lynch thing is, I suppose, giving lots of good actors small little parts and seeing what they did with it. And they were all very good. So I'm looking forward to seeing the acting. And yeah, the sets. I mean, I've seen so little, and as much, I'm maybe a bit like you guys that there's been a saturation of clips from coming around the world, and I kind of don't want to absorb any more of it because I feel like I'm seeing too much of it without being able to put it in a, give it a timeline or put it in context. So I'm just waiting to see it, and I'm hoping that I can see it safely in a cinema. That's my main concern at the minute, and I'd like to take my family along to see it. Because Dune, believe it or not, I mean, Dune has been a big part of my life. Believe it or not, and it ate up for at this point, having done this, it's eating it's ate up at least 5.5 years of my life. So I've invested a lot of time in it over the years, for fun and professionally. So I am genuinely looking forward to it, and I really like the original David Lynch film, and I really like both TV series. So I am just enjoy it, and I don't think any book can be literally translated to the screen. I just simply don't think it's possible. So I'm very happy to separate the things and look at it that way. So I'm really looking forward to it, and I'm hoping you guys are as well. But I had a very interesting experience with the cinema in my youth, and it's to do with Belfast and stuff. But um, used to just absorb cinema as a very young child. Chris Gibson says, I started with God Emperor as it was the only book the local library had. Yeah, I'm like, I can understand that, Chris. That's the thing that happened to me when I was young a lot. There was more than enough information there for me to get an understanding of the history. Yeah, you could read God Emperor on its own, and that would be quite interesting. I take it you backtrack then, Chris. Um, but yeah, there've been lots of series of books over the years that we've talked about this. I've never read the whole series because of what was in my local library, and I would have book three. We're talking things like Lensman, and I've read book three, book five, never got book one, and you just sort of kind of sometimes things fall out of your brain, I suppose. And but I'm actually like to pursue a lot of literature like that at the minute, thinking back to my childhood and thinking, wow, I've never got all of those read because and you can pick an awful lot of them up very cheaply on through the web on secondhand bookshops. ABE Books is a pretty good one. I'd buy a lot of books internationally from there. But I used to have to once upon a time I used to actually fly to Europe to get a couple of books. That's true. It's completely ridiculous. I've flown to Europe twice to buy books, and got the books I was after because I could not get them here. It's a while ago, I suppose. Different world now. Sean says, I'm going to need to see it regardless. I absolutely loved Arrival, but was tepid on Blade Runner 2049, so I could see it go either way for me. I managed to catch that Arrival's on Netflix the other night. I think we were talking about, Sean, so I noticed that I'd started the first 10 minutes and had the run out, so I'm going to put it back and have a look at it. I like Blade Runner 2049 as a standalone kind of thing, but yeah, there's a lot of strange things in its plot and stuff, and things that aren't not really explained too well. sound design of the film and seeing in the theater is supposed to be quite an experience. Yeah, the best one for me in recent years, there were two films. Again, it was the Dread film, the sound and the boo, in the movies was great. But Mad Max has been the Mad Max Fury Road has been the best overall cinema experience I've had in a long, long time. Um, I just, vroom, it was great to smack you in the face and away you go for a ride. I loved it so much. And I took my wife to see it. She's just, the noise, she's very noisy. Loved it. And Tom Hardy was a pretty good new Mad Max as well. And Charlize Theron, absolutely. Everybody in that's brilliant. It's a great film. And the old car's back as well. I have to say, I'm a bit of a fan of the V8 Interceptor. Chris says, I also enjoyed Arrival. I watched 2049 once. I saw the original Blade Runner with the voiceover and happy ending courtesy of The Shining. I've watched it regularly since. Yeah, Chris, that's my Blade Runner. That's the one. That's the European cut with the original. I've got the box set with all of them. And it's a 10 with a wee. It's a very good. I think it's an anna. But once they sorted out all the legalese. But I think from that one you get the sense Deckard's not a replicant, and it's the very little added to the film, I suppose. But the voiceover for me really gives it that film noir, cold fish. That's what my wife called me. That kind of thing. Noir the detectives in noir, and he is a weary type of character, Deckard, I think, in the film. So I think the narration lends a lot to it. And I'm always sad that even if you wanted the other version with the unicorn, and you can assume that he is a replicant, I still think that they've always stripped the narration out of that, I think, and they should put it back. They should create a version where they put it back in. I think it still worked well. Yes, the ending courtesy of The Shining. Absolutely. It's a great film. Excuse me. Keith Cobb says the miniseries was far too campy and looked so cheap. It took me right out of it. It seemed made to correct the adaptation deficiencies of the Lynch version while introducing so many of its own. Fury Road plot, Keith, a guy and a few girls drive somewhere, then drive back. It's Fury Road is kind of almost a remake of Mad Max 2, but that's what the great thing about Mad Max films is they tend to drive along a road straight and then turn around and come back around. So Fury Road just had a bit of more road and a nicer view, I think. But it's kind of the same. They do that in Mad Max too. They all the whole piling down. It's all a deep, and then they turn around and pile up at the same other way again. But it's great. I think somebody said that. I think one of the film magazines once did what's the greatest car chase of all time, something like that. And I think they said that Mad Max 2 lost out to something like Bullet or something like that, because it was on a straight road and that they just turned around. I think in Bullet doesn't even change up gears, I think, like 50 times or something. But yeah, Fury Road is great, absolutely great. A lot of people like Mad Max too, but for me, the first movie feels so real and fantastic at the same time, and it was awesome. I love all of them. Absolutely love all of them. The way I look at the first film is that flames that were going up in the background, as we know, is kind of your man's car blowing up and stuff. But I always like to think that's the nuclear bombs going off as well. But Mad Max is kind of a postmodern gothic horror in that sense, and then it transitions to post-apocalyptic, where the stories remained. But the Road Warrior Mad Max 2 is just wow, incredible film. I have a story. I suppose the first 3 videos when I was young that my dad brought home. Here's a brand new video player, VHS, fortunately not Betamax. What was it? The first 3 films were The Plague Dogs, Silver Dream Racer, and Mad Max 2. And so as a little kid, when we put on Silver Dream Racer, with David Essex, motorcycle racing film, and it has an absolutely horrific, oh my god, ending. And so I was quite young, a bit traumatized by that. And then we put on The Plague Dogs, which is the other cartoon, I suppose, by the author of Watership Down. and it has a just, if you like dogs, oh my god, horrific ending. Uh, uh, and I was sent to bed and had nightmares, and then I got up and always remember this. I watched Mad Max 2, and my parents thought it was meant to be, oh no, and they just, well, just leave it on. And it made me feel a lot better, and I watched it, and I could get to sleep afterwards. That's a true story. First three, but and I kind of a lot of people die in the end of that one as well, I suppose, and it just ends with the hero going, "Ugh," I, and them driving off in the distance. So it's three horrific, three horrific video experiences. The Mad Max 2, so it's one of the first very adult films I saw as quite a young child, I think, and I enjoyed it very much. Very young, 6 or 7. See when Mad Max leaves a guy to cut off his own arm. Now, burn to death disturbed me greatly. Yeah, sets it up with the. I don't know. It's funny how we absorb things when we're kids. I saw quite. I'm a child who couldn't sleep very well, so I've watched an awful lot of stuff and awful lot of adult material when I was younger, I suppose. But turned out okay. But yeah, it's the first Mad Max film is very 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 visceral. The car chases are very full on. But the entire first part of the film, I think, the whole big chase at the start of the film is amazing. And you gotta love the car. It's just the car. I think it's the best movie car ever. It's my favorite car, and they're apparently incredibly impractical. But I've often said to my wife that if we ever get that place where we want to be, I suppose where we're going to retire and settle for the rest of our days, I would quite like to buy a Ford Falcon, the Mad Max car, and not to drive it, but just to set it up in the back. You wouldn't want to drive it. You couldn't afford to drive it. Just how much miles the gallon, the engine and all that thing's not really real. But the idea is just to put it up on bricks and put some like a wee cinema screen and have some road, and that we could have a wee drive-in cinema. And just make it look a bit like the car, I suppose. The whimsy of man, eh? But yeah, great stuff. So there we go. How are we doing? It's just gone 11:05, folks. Here in the evening, obviously, I suppose. Has anybody got any questions? We've jumped on to. Well, I suppose we hopped from Danny Villeneuve's films and we're on to Fury Road and Mad Max and stuff like that. But if anybody's got any questions, fire them away, or more comments, etc. Science fiction, anything science fiction, I suppose. But yeah. I suppose the cinema is a big thing. I used to go to a very particular cinema in Belfast, and I would have seen almost a whole stack of movies there throughout my childhood. And if I'll get a lot of double bills, very much the old-fashioned type of cinema. And I have Strand Road Cinema is what you call it. I have a list of films, and I call them my Strand Road films, if you like. And I all saw all of these movies in that cinema. Star Wars would be one of them. There you go. So, any questions on the Kwisatz Haderach or anything like that, or same anything at all? Fire away. Sean says, "Let's have a look." Same. That's a Generation X thing. Lots of conspiracy, dystopian, nuclear Armageddon films in the 70s and 80s. Loved your review of A Boy and His Dog. Oh, thank you very much, Sean. That book, I think we said, has just sort of just arrived this year, so I thought it was quite timely. There's Karen. Hello again. Hello, Karen. Thanks for joining us. I hope you don't mind, Karen, but I pronounce your name as in the ferryman of the river Styx kind of thing, if that's okay. I take the C as a K, if you like. So I hope that's correct. How are you doing, sir? How are you doing, Karen? And thank you very much for joining us. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff like that around Sean at the time. I quite a lot of the I suppose the post-apocalyptic genre. You're absolutely right. There's a lot of good Damnation Alley and things like that. I would have watched a lot of movies like that at the time, and they're good fun. It did get a bit silly later on, I think. Things like Hell Comes to Frogtown. I don't know if anybody's seen Hell Comes to Frogtown or not, but if you haven't, check it out. It's you like both pronunciations, no worries, Carol. There we go. Within the Greek, my Greek anyway, so I go with a hard C's are always K's. So there you go. So anybody got any questions? I saw Alien as a young child. It's one of my favorite films today, and I fell in love with the Giger style very early on. Yeah, I actually, that's one of the films that really scared the hell out of me. Actually, David, when I was very young, I saw Alien far too young, I think, and sort of in bed alone one night, and the alien absolutely terrified me. But I'll tell you something. I used to have dreams about, those dreams where you don't move. If you don't move, I used to have dreams like that when I was young. I suppose when vampires occupied them, and after I saw Ridley Scott's Alien, then the alien occupied. And then I come to enjoy the alien. But yes, I had a big, I have a big H.R. Giger book on his book on the alien. It was a birthday present from a long time ago, so I became a big fan of that, and I stopped being scared of it, which is interesting. But yeah, I think there's a program on about Giger somewhere on Netflix, possibly, maybe, or Amazon. I often thought the Giger inspired not just Giger Master, Giger absolutely. Oh, I mean, yes, his art is incredible, isn't it? And it certainly stands alone. I think there's many imitators these days. I often thought Giger inspired Harkonnen stuff was a great missed opportunity from Jodorowsky's Dune. There is a bunch of his stuff in the David Lynch film. If you look for it, it's mainly, I think, in Caladan in the sets. Karen says the Kwisatz Haderach brings us back to the topic of why are the Bene Gesserit all female, and why does the Kwisatz Haderach have to be male? I guess. Well, ultimately, I suppose the Kwisatz Haderach is going to be a male Bene Gesserit. Maybe they just want to invite men into the club. I'm not too sure. And we were talking about, I suppose it's to do with evolutionary branches after the Butlerian Jihad. Possibly, I don't know, women would band together for safety or something like that. But because I think it's because that there are all male and all female religious orders, and that if they're attempting to create a political school and poses something, then if the religious disguise is something that they're going to go with, then that probable segregation of genders probably why they become a sisterhood, I suppose, and like nuns or something like that. Yeah. But the Kwisatz Haderach's got to be male for the to see into the male ancestral line. But yeah, it kind of, if genes are genes, I suppose. And there's something about all the whole. I mean, race memory, other memory is, it's a fictional construct here, I think. But it's a one that's used to explore a topic, I suppose. Keith says, I find interesting the fictional history behind the prohibition of AI in the Dune series, as I see our real development of algorithms leading to that place. Yeah, so some of the developments that are going on at the minute are pretty. It depends on what you use a machine for. You can write a nice letter to somebody with a pen, or you can stab them in the eye with it, if you see what I mean. And almost anything can be a weapon in that sense. Prohibition of AI. Again, I don't know if it's, we talk occasionally about this, Keith, but it's not necessarily, it's AI is a thing we could say, artificial intelligence, thinking machines, etc., sophisticated machinery. And I think obviously within the great everything that the great convention that lead the CET and the Butlerian Jihad, there's something that there is a line that they draw, and so that we have to assume that machinery is allowed up to some kind of technological level, but it's about replacing human minds, I suppose. But the world's in a very interesting situation at the minute, and I think technological addiction is, and we're at a point where science and technology, particularly technology, is advancing in an almost exponential manner. I think it is advancing in an exponential manner. So what's coming is coming so fast. I don't know if you guys know this. If anybody who's aware of the Judge Dredd universe would be aware of what a footsie is. And a footsie is someone who just goes nuts and just starts killing until they're killed. It's to do with the term from, you can see behind me on the shelf. That book there is called Future Shock by Alvin Toffler, isn't it? Alvin Toffler, it is, yeah. It's a very interesting book if any of you haven't heard about it, but it's to do with how humans deal with the ongoing advancement of technology, and can we cope with it because it's happening so quickly. Let me just catch up with your comments, guys. Chris says, yes, the 70s double features at Studio 4. The three films I remember watching as a child that scared me were the Omega Man, Soylent Green, and Planet of the Apes all starred Charlton Heston. Three great films, yeah. Soylent Green is Make Room, Make Room, and Soylent Green usually has me. It's Beth. I don't know what you think. Best death ever. Is it Edward G. Robinson and Charlton Heston? That Soylent Green would have you in tears. My mother passed away in something kind of a similar way. My mother was in a coma for a week, and we played her music, and it was a bit Soylent Green in that sense. Not anything like that, but we played her a lot of Beethoven and stuff, and things. And I don't know if the idea came to me because my mother, we were told that all she could do was hear. So not Soylent Green, the film, was an inspiration for me in terms of the music I played for my mum, believe it or not. So very fond of that film. They're great films. The Omega Man is kind of a version of I Am Legend. It's one of the film versions. There's about 3 or 4 now. There's there's a Vincent Price version, I think, and then there's that one, and then there's the recent Will Smith one, I think. Nobody's ever done justice to that book, I think, at all. And every time somebody makes that film, makes I Am Legend into a film, I just want to scream at them. Why do you change it? It's such a good book. Really a really good science fiction horror book, by the way. Highly recommend it. Is it Richard Matheson, isn't it? But yeah, it's the 70s and very young in the 70s and early 80s, great for cinema. And then it all went well. It didn't go too bad. Actually, I think more modern cinema here is a bit more of a problem, but cinema's always been good here, I think. If the Bene Gesserit were all male somehow, would they be working towards a female Kwisatz Haderach? Why not? Probably. If the Bene Gesserit were all male somehow, I don't know. That's interesting. I suppose what we're not even considering, sexual preference or anything like that within the Bene Gesserit. But there you go. But it's to do with a bloodline, isn't it? A race memory where race memory is based on gender. Maybe it is possible ultimately, Carol, by the way, that their ultimate goal maybe is to try and breed a human being that has both lines of the collective unconscious, if you see what I mean, both race memories. So then humanity, it's quite possible. Where are we? Oh, better catch up a wee second. But yeah, it's good. I think, by the way, Karen, just on that point, I think the great thing about Dune is that you can run all sorts of wee thought experiments with it, just like you're doing. It's interesting. Vintage Stereo says Chris Gibson Invasion of the Body Snatchers is scary too. I love the couple of versions of that. Yeah, Invasion of the Body Snatchers is a great film. Is that the one with Donald? No, what do you call him? Donald Sutherland. That one. He says, I mean the fact that we're delegating so many of our own decisions to computers, whether a true AI or not, in ways that even the designers do not understand, giving control to machines. Yeah, it's to be honest with you, it's one of the reasons why I don't mark exams anymore. My machine's opinion is preferred over mine, or over my own expertise, and I'm having none of it, so I don't do it anymore. I was working as an examiner for 15 years. But in terms of what you're saying, Keith, handing over your decisions to computers, you hand them over to people. So what's the difference? If you see what I mean, when you vote and how politics and so on works, whether true AI or not, ways that even the designers do not understand, giving control to machines, you hand control over to people who, on a daily basis, and we do it all around the world when we elect people who've got no idea what the hell they're doing, and we don't educate people on how to run a country, for example. You know what I mean? I don't. Nobody in my country is qualified to run a country. All the people that are running it, they have no idea. They just make it up as they go along. So, and sorry, just jokingly, I suppose that in the sense of handing over your decisions to computers or machines is no different than handing over your decisions in your life to another person, I think. But yes, I totally. Sorry, I'm being a bit of a pedant here, Keith, but I do agree with you in a sense. But I think it depends. Artificial intelligence is Well, pretty much. We talked about this Butler's book. Erewhon is really the first ever book to look at machine evolution and so on. So we've had this kind of 130 years within fiction, and particularly science fiction, has looked and examined artificial intelligence in many ways. And like a lot of things in science fiction, Keith, I'd say that the whole camp is 50-50. Half the time we're presented with, oh no, evil artificial intelligence will be our machine overlords, and that's what Butler presents, by the way. But he says they'll be nine. But then you've got the opposite side of that, where you've got the culture. The culture aren't perfect, but you do have a mankind kind of in symbiosis with a benign machine intelligence that's way beyond us. But you have to. I don't know if any of you read the culture novels, but if you have read them, you have to understand that there's the culture aren't perfect, but even within the machines, the minds, there's an element of who gives a shit, really. If you know, there's one of them called Meat Fucker, and it's also known as the Grey Area, I think. It's a very interesting character. You'll find it in a couple of Ian M. Banks's books. It's a main character, one of the main characters in Accession. And if you want to look that Accession, by the way, is a really interesting book to look at. Of all the Ian Banks books, it's what I would call it's the mind heavy one. It features the ships that are the artificial intelligence ships, and I think it's the interesting times, gang, isn't it? The culture have contact and special circumstances, and these are the two groups that Ian Banks lets his reader engage with the culture through. But within that, there's a very special group. They're I think secret powers of the culture, and they're a collection of Machiavellian kind of. I think they're the equivalent of the Diogenes Club from Sherlock Holmes, and they're known as the Interesting Times Gang. So that's an interesting book in terms of artificial intelligence. Sean says, just to catch up, Sean says Alvin Toffler's Future Shock is fascinating. Totally agree about I Am Legend. Yeah, Future Shock. It's a let me just show it to you there. It's an old book now, and I think Alvin Toffler just passed away a couple of years ago, very recently, I think. Disturbing and challenging book. There we go, Future Shock. Quite easy to find, I think, about secondhand shops and stuff. It was a very popular book. Well, I understand it was quite popular. And in fact, Judge Dredd brought me to this. I kind of wanted to understand what a footsie was. Footsies are people who suffer from future shock in the Judge Dredd universe. They're just madmen with guns going nuts. But it's always that they just couldn't handle one subtle aspect of technology. Goodness, we're piling on here. I better read a wee bit, folks, so I can catch up. Let's see. Okay, Doc, what do you think about Barbarella? Tell the truth. Love it. Got a copy here. Dildano's sex scene is if you noticed my wee A to Z there, we said we were going to do a video on sex and science fiction. But the picture in there is Dildano and Barbarella doing it Earth-style. I love Barbarella. I think it's a great film. And if anybody's not seen it, go watch it. It's great. Great. Absolutely great. There you go. Is that a good enough honest answer for you? Telling you true, sir. Or madam. Sorry, I apologize. I keep applying generous. Sorry about that, vintage. But that's the honest opinion. I love it. Yes, with Donald Sullivan, the Vincent Price version of I Am Legend is or was available on YouTube. It's interesting. Vincent plays himself with great panache. Yeah, Vincent Price is great. Well, there's an old British comedy's just hit. I think it might be on Netflix. Is it Murder at the House of Death or something like that? It's a Kenny Everett film. Vincent Price is in it, and it's a very early 80s film. It's a spoof and it's brilliant. I love it. It's really stupid. If you haven't seen it, check it out. Bloodbath at the House of Murder, or Bloodbath at the House of Death, I think it's called. It's a very silly film. David says, must be going soon. Interesting discussion here, everyone. Evening all. Hope to see you next time. I also saw Barbara when I was younger. That was interesting. If you're away, David, sorry about that. We'll catch you next time, and thanks for joining us. Yeah, Barbara was great. It's good fun. It's a camp film. It's quite saucy, and it kind of has that European sensibility of science fiction that you would get in Metal Hurler and stuff like that. But it's very, very fun. That's Samuel T. Francis's point in Leviathan. Its enemies about managerialism and the iron law of oligarchy. Or like in Cube, it's a headless blunder operating under the illusion of a master plan. Let me see. Machine is better. Oh, hang on. I missed something here. Maybe the machine is better. You can at least pull the plug. I see. Right. Let me see. Samuel T. Francis's point in Leviathan and its enemies about managerialism and the iron law of oligarchy. I've seen Cube, Sean. I quite like that film. It was a headless blunder operating under the illusion of a master plan. Samuel T. Francis, when's he writing Leviathan and its enemies about managers and iron law of oligarchy? I think oligarchies tend to spring up within existing law systems. It depends. I think, is that something to do with modern oligarchies? We tend to use that term in terms of Russian billionaires, don't we, these days? You always bring up quite interesting comments, Sean, that I'm not too sure how to respond to, but I'm not aware of that work. But that's Samuel T. Francis's point. The machine is better. Oh, the machine is that the point you mean? Sorry, Sean. I'm trying to just get the context of it. What Keith's saying, at least you can pull the plug. Culture novels, right? I'm catching up here, so let's see. Culture novels are fantastic, says David. Next to Dune, it's my favorite universe to read from. Yeah, it's. I actually do. As much as I love the Dune universe, I much more enjoy. Ian Banks is a product of different times, but he's something else. He's extremely good. Very different writer than Frank Herbert. Yeah, it's a great. The culture is brilliant. I'd actually say it's probably one of my favorite universe to read, and if you go for that kind of thing. Sean Welland says, "Oh, Ian M. Banks, yeah, I was really into Ray Kurzweil and the technological singularity, extropianism in the 1990s and 2000s. Yeah, extropianism, that kind of philosophy, if you like. I think it's still around, Sean. I used to kind of talk about myself. I thought about that, the idea of extropy is the opposite of entropy. It's kind of trying to get towards technical singularity and get us all to be immortal, isn't it? Or the idea that the first humans who are going to live to 1,000 are around now. But yeah, that's it. Ian Banks, yeah, really the Ray Kurzweil. That rings a bell, Sean. I have to say, I must have a look. But absolutely, technological singularity, extropianism. And I actually, at the time, way back when, Sean, I used to try and write some stories back then, and all of my stories were, I wrote a bunch of stories about different ways that singularity could happen. I never published anything because I was a bad writer and I didn't have any life experience. And I put it down to, or tried to get them published, I suppose, or even sold. But I kind of stopped myself, but I wrote a lot of them. Promised that I'd come back to them one day in my 40s or 50s. Running out of time on that one. We'd start talking about Mr. Banks just as I have to check out. We'll always have room to chat about all things science fiction, David. So we can always chat about him. Again, there's plenty to say about Mr. Banks. But you love his concept of the subliming, yes, and the culture. Okay, meeting started off for a meeting. Going to Sublime for a bit. Bye now, says David. Thank you very much, David. Take it easy, mate. Just backing up there because I ran with David's thread there. Sean says John Brunner's Stand on Zanzibar has a similar theme of people who just snap because of the conditions of modernity. Sorry, we were skipping around in reference to like what Milgram called the agentic state. Handing over your decisions to someone else, politicians just as much to machines. Yeah, I thought that was the gist of what we were going. Thank you for clearing that up, Sean. Vintage Stereo says, Doc, what is your favorite game, PC, TV, console? My favorite game of all time, as I don't have it, and I wish I hadn't hung on to it, is an old PC game called Ascendancy, which is an old science fiction strategy game. But let me see, I don't know. I've had to lose so many computer games over the years because of upgrades and stuff, but so I'm a generation. I've been playing on Spectrum computers and Commodores as well, so quite like games from back then. Ascendancy, what year? I would have been playing it on Windows 95, so that should date it, I think. The Dune strategy games on PC were pretty good. Yeah, I got a couple of them here. I got the old ones somewhere up there. Dune 2000's up there, I think. I've got Emperor Battle for Dune as well. I like those kind of games. And the old I used to play a lot of the old. I would play different games on computers than I would on consoles or anything like that. But I suppose I also, first generation arcade, playing Pac-Man and Asteroids and stuff in Korean here. But no, I would like games like Jet Set Willy and Manic Miner and stuff like that when I was young. And a great favorite in the era of the Commodore computers was Barbarian, which was a kind of sword chopping one. But really, I'm showing my age now. From what year? Let's see. The Dune strategy games in PC were pretty good. There was another one called Laser Squad, which was a similar kind of thing from around then that I loved. But maybe even before that, early 90s maybe. Big into Total War and Civilization. Yeah. I played Total War years ago. Civilization, I think I played Civilization 5 and enjoyed it thoroughly. I do like those kind of games. Real-time strategy games that tie into the new Dune movies. There is an old one. It's, as I said, Emperor Battle for Dune's pretty good. But yeah, I'm sure they probably will. Caron, I think the marketing's going full on. I think, there's board games and there's all sorts of things coming out for Dune, I suppose. Ascendancy was re-released on iOS. Speaking of apocalyptic culture, the classic game I grew up with was Wasteland, which is modern times inspired Fallout games. 35 for me, best games are Half-Life, Quake, StarCraft. Half-Life, the original Half-Life's really good. The Dune 2, never really played. I've played Quake, yeah, Quake 2. I quite enjoyed those. StarCraft, never played any of those. The Dune 2 real-time strategy game was so good. Most people didn't pick up on RTS until Command and Conquer followed it. Yeah, it's the kind of those are the granddaddy of those. And I suppose what do we have? The Command and Conquers, and then you have the Tiberium Wars ones. I suppose there's different universes, and then the Red Alert ones. So I would have played a lot of those. I'm just having a look here, but I played all the very old Call of Duties and Medal of Honors before they kind of evolved. I don't know. And I like Mass Effect. I really like the Mass Effect games. And I love the Mad Max game. Totally in love with it. Let me just see. But yeah, I have a long history of games, and I don't really. I suppose my son's got the new consoles and stuff, but I console games. I would play games more like Tomb Raider, those kind of that viewpoint, and the Resident Evils and stuff like that. Maybe God of War, but not. I'm not particularly. I don't tend to buy console games too much anymore. They're too dear. And I'm a lot of sandbox games you can just. I suppose I'd be a big fan of what's it called? Honestly, my brain's turned. Hang on 1 second. A complete blank, folks. What the hell is the game? Skyrim. Yeah, I've got Skyrim's the game I was trying to think of. Sorry. PS3 for me. Sean, the last gate console I owned. Skyrim, I really enjoyed that, and I modded the hell out of it. So about 200 mods in it, and the one through the modding community that fixed it. But I actually started playing that game, and it was so badly bugged that I actually abandoned it for an entire year. And a friend of mine, Simon, kind of says and I pointed out to me this. I can't remember the name of it, but it's an online community that had started doing patches and fixes and stuff for it. And so we got it fixed and actually managed to get past a certain point in the game. So I really enjoyed that. And I like games that you can play in different paths if you like good or evil, that kind of thing. Dune board game, Grimdark. I've never played it. I'd love to have a go at it. You're saying it's solid. Yeah, we like our games in this house, but we don't have too many board games. Play a lot of word games in this house, actually. But reading my old Lovecraft, Moorcock, and Robert E. Howard paperbacks for the last time before I take them to book cycle. I looked out for Ian Banks when I dropped them off. Great to chat off the bed. Yeah, excellent, Chris. Yeah, that's a good set of books to read. Yeah, check out Banks. There's 10 culture novels. And one's a set of short stories. They're really good. Mad lad academic still playing games. Oh dear. So I'm not really an academic. Grimdark, I've had to point this out to people. I'm an individual, and I haven't been an academic, I suppose, for a long time. In that sense, that I'm not part of an academic institution, if you like. I suppose I'm more like a peripatetic tutor, but I'm a one man show. Um, do you play StarCraft? You should play StarCraft, one of the best sci-fi games of all time. Really, it is a whole new universe like in June. I'll check it out at some point. But thinking about a lot. The good thing I suppose these days, a lot of the old computer games are kind of being made available to buy cheaply online and download. So it's changed the game a wee bit. But sometimes, yeah, just I suppose the most recent game that I've been playing would be Mad Max, yeah, and really enjoyed that. And I thought they'd done really well. And it's linked to the film, and a lot of, again, Mad Max Fury Road is one of those films where there's material around the movie that links to it and lends itself to it. That's way beyond anything like a trailer can do. I don't know if you've read, any of you checked out the Mad Max comic books that came out, and they fill in a good bit of the story as well. StarCraft is influenced by Warhammer 40k heavily, so similar as Dune Art of Stretch. I'm well aware of this. I'm aware of the StarCraft games because a mate of mine used to have them a long time ago. We used to share a flat, and we had our two computers set up against each other. So we used to have a lot of what you would call NERPL mods for, I think, Red Alert 2, and we would just spend half an hour building massive armies with all these mods and super nuke and just go at each other for a while. It was quite good fun. But there's so many good games. I'd really fancy trying out and I think there's some new Dune board games as well, aren't there? But I do like that kind of thing. I have to say we were kind of talking about board games because we don't have too many in this house, but we've got Talisman. And apart from that, I suppose standards like Cluedo and Monopoly, which we like Cluedo, I suppose, but we're trying to find a game that doesn't take too long to play sometimes, I suppose. That's a good thing. Academia as an institution suffers from Pornell's iron law of bureaucracy. I have yet to read Jerry Pornell's science fiction, though. Hang on. Jerry Pornell. Hang on a second. Folks, sorry, I'm always turning my back to you, but there's usually a good reason for it. Am I thinking? Who am I thinking on? Yeah. I'll tell you what, Jerry Pornell. Okay, I'm not particularly well read with him either, but I'll tell you what. You're sometimes asking for recommendations for a really good read, and this is the only book I've read by these guys. But this is a pretty well known, The Mote in God's Eye. So that's Larry Niven and Jerry Pornell. That's a cracking book. I really like this book. I've read it twice, and again, at the minute, I've got a sense of the book, but I can't remember it too much. It's books like that for me. I will definitely come back to them, but I really enjoyed this book, and it's kind of pulpy. It's kind of it's a first contact book. It's really good. I'm not going to say anything else about it. If have a read at that, and it's excellent. That's a Jerry Pornell and Larry Niven. I think they might have written a couple of books together. But yeah, academic institutions. I've been to quite a few. I did not enjoy the last one at all. And there's I think I said, Sean, I use universities to get either educate myself or get qualifications, and that's it. They're businesses, and I walk away from them. But there are, I suppose, ethoses and there's atmospheres in universities, and they're not nice places to be at the minute. And the Northern Ireland's education system is sectarian as well, and I'm outside of their sectarian viewpoint, so I often get abuse from both from both sets of people actually, and then they get shouted at quite badly by me. So no, I'm not too fond on our academic institutions in Northern Ireland. Not comment too much. Vintage Services and the Zerg race is influenced from H.R. Giger. H.R. Giger and Xenomorphs especially, with Larry Niven. Thank you, Sean. If that was a good recommendation, it's a great book. If you hope you enjoy it. One of my little secondhand shop finds it was an absolute. I'll give this a go. And I really enjoyed it. Sarah Kerrigan, the Queen of Blade, is Lee Tobler. Am I missing something? I've lost the thread here, guys. Hang on. Sarah Kerrigan, the Queen of Blade, is Lee Talbot. And the Zergs are a race. I'm going to have a look at that quickly. Context. What have we got on Zerg and Star? Oh, Zark. Ah, right. Oh, sorry, you're on StarCraft. Is that talking about StarCraft? I think, Vinny. Sorry, you lost me there a wee bit. Tobler was sorry. Lee Tobler was one of H.R. Giger's models. Thank you very much, Grimdark. I started kind of having a look at the Giger documentary the other day, but I was just to have a nosy at it, and I think it had a wee clip of him going through his door and just some of his own sculptures and stuff at his house. So I think it was kind of the thing that I would look at, but my wife wouldn't. So I kind of added it to have a look at. But yeah, he's an interesting geezer, Giger. Didn't he do some work with Debbie Harry as well? Debbie Harry's one of them kind of singer models around at the time that a lot of artists seem to use as their muse or something, with Larry Neville. Thank you. No worries, Sean. Sarah Kerrigan, the Queen of Blade, is Lee Talbot. Oh, catching up again, and that's Talbot is one of H.R. Giger's models. Jodorowsky's Doom is certainly interesting to say the least. I watched the documentary a wee while back. I don't know. I think the whole thing is quite bizarro. I think, but it would have been interesting to see. But I think Dune fans would have hated it. To be honest with you, I don't know. Doesn't he sort of say, "Oh, here's the book. I don't give a shit," kind of thing. I must watch it again actually, just to refresh my memory. I remember enjoying the documentary on Jodorowsky's Dune enormously, and just even the books and the comic art and stuff. And I think somebody's recommended to me is the Incal, which I'm thinking about. The government's handing out £100 vouchers here to everybody in the country to get us all back to the shops. And I'm not too sure what we're going to do. I'm thinking books, maybe. Incal and Meta Barons. Was that another one? Pardon me. So there we go. Yeah, there's always good stuff to recommend. Somebody was saying, "Well, can I see your bookshelf?" the other day, and so that I may judge you. I think it was a humorous comment, and I was telling him, "Well, you shouldn't judge people by shouldn't judge them by a book, or shouldn't judge people by their books, and you shouldn't judge a book by its cover." Jodorowsky is a man in the best way possible. The Holy Mountain is so trippy. I watched a couple of his films in the early 90s under certain conditions, Sean. So all I'll say is I don't remember them, and that they combined themselves with reality at the time. So I can't possibly comment. There's two films that he did. Holy Mountain's one of them, and I'm trying to. And the last time somebody talked to me about this was I went to see Electric Six in Belfast before COVID. And they were asking me what I thought about the Holy Mountain and our film. I had to explain to them that I have not proper memories of those. It was very funny. But yeah, so I don't know, just in terms of different stuff that is on the bookshelf for recommendations, but I'd kind of assembled this stuff in terms of trying to build up an A to Z of what to do for the science fiction station. So it's not a complete. It's just a small selection of science fiction books, and we've got all the Frank Herbert stuff there. We have everything by him pretty much up until I think some of the posthumous releases and stuff. But I suppose a couple of I'll tell you what, just for a minute or two, I'll run out. If you've got any questions, guys, through our comments, fire away. But I'll run you through maybe a few people that I haven't mentioned up here. But I'll just run you through who's up here, really, I suppose. But we've got Ballard, and we've got the Book of the New Sun, and we have Brian Aldiss's Cryptozoic, which is an interesting book. We've got the Hyperion Cantos, and we have Of Time and Stars by Arthur C. Clarke, that book I was telling you about that I kind of got me going on my science fiction journey. We've got Clarke's 2001. We've got 3 of the Environmental Disasters by Ballard. We've got sitting there. I bought them not too long back. So that's The Drowned World, The Crystal World, and The Drought. Anne Leckie's Ancillary Justice is a modern science fiction trilogy that's exceptionally good. and especially in light of today's issues over Doc. What time is it? Here is 1:42 a.m. I have to go. Vintage, no bother. So until next time, thank you very much. It's 11:42 here. But all the very best. Sure, we'll catch you next time. I'm going to stay on to about midnight again, folks, if that's okay. So we've got another 20 minutes, and we'll be here every night until the until the Dune movie comes out. So there's Philip Jose Farmer's River World Series up there. Anne Leckie's Ancillary Justice is a ancillary. Not sure what you would call the trilogy. It's the Raj trilogy, isn't it? Is exceptionally good. Though I just bought a new book by her recently and had extreme difficulty reading it. It's very interesting in terms of artificial intelligence and playing around with issues of gender, and it's done well. So it's one of those things. We've got Michael Moorcock's Gloriana, which was kind of enshrined as a classic, which is interesting enough. Then who have we got here? Let me see. Just some of the female writers. Bear with me a second. That's Susie McKee Charis. The Furies Walk to the End of the World and Motherlines, and also her book. Hang on. Yeah, The Furies, and that's it there. And we've got Herman Hesse's The Glass Bead Game is a pretty good one. Have you got Moorcock's Jerry Cornelius? I've got one. I've actually maybe got a couple, but not complete. But I've got. Oh, I don't. Yeah, I've definitely got a Jerry Cornelius downstairs. I've got all sorts of Moorcock, but nothing. Very little complete. I've got a couple of those, those nice little box sets. I have the Hawkman books as a box set, but unfortunately, a lot of that stuff's downstairs. I'll try and have a wee nosy and see what's more interesting on the other bookshelves. But so we have a lot of this stuff over here is just Frank Herbert, and I have a set of the Dune books there, and all of Frank's different novels. We've got Lucian of Samosada and Olaf Stapleton. We've got Butler's Errol. What have we got there? Joe Haldeman's Forever trilogy is a good one, folks. Let me see. Peace and War trilogy. No, what's it called? Sorry, that's very good. And most people just know the Forever War. And it's an excellent book. But in terms of what I'm hoping, let me see. Also, we have a lot of Philip K. Dick, Marge Piercy. We've got a lot of Ursula K. Le Guin. We've got Russell Hoban's Ridley Walker's there. Philip K. Dick again, as I said. Some of this isn't quite science fiction. We've got a bunch of H.G. Wells, The War in the Air, and The Shape of Things to Come. Got a rather nice comic book edition of Scanner Darkly with the rather good rotoscoped film of which is it's an excellent book. One of the best Philip K. Dick books, I would say. We've got some Harlan Ellison, Mary Shelley, Margaret Atwood, Stanisław Lem. Got a bit of Ira Levin, a lot of Ian Banks. We've got some books on the making of the film Blade Runner and stuff like that. Some academic books. Walter Miller, Asimov. We've got, for anybody interested in 1984, you may not have heard of 1985. It's a good read. Selection, kind of Burgess's warnings about the unions and stuff like that. We've got some H. Rider Haggard, Jonathan Swift, and so on. So it's kind of it's meant to be a wee representative kind of science fiction set, if you like, as much as that's what people do for these things, isn't it? They put their books behind them, but in this case, we're actually using them and working with them, So yeah, but I'd have to run down the stairs to grab that Michael. I have a bunch of Michael Moorcock here, but believe it or not, who's asked this? Grimdark. It's the really large. Goodness, I can't read that. They're really quite large compendiums, but my microphone is attached to a spring arm, which is attached to the bookcase. So all my big Michael Moorcock books are my counterbalance. If I lift them off, this whole thing will come down. But I'll tell you what we do have here. I've got a signed edition of the Behold the Man. We've got Dancers at the End of Time collected. We've got Nomad of the Time Streams collected, and we've got the Eternal Champion here collected, and we have the individual Elric paperbacks here. But this is just a kind of, I don't have my books organized in any particular way around the house because I've no room for them. I've got that many, unfortunately, and then a bunch of there's a whole sorts in here. We've got Kim Stanley Mars Raw. Kim Stanley Robinson's Mars trilogies there, and we have a lot of Sherlock Holmes and that kind of stuff, I suppose. So it was just the kind of we've got a James White's a Northern Irish writer that I think is quite well known in America, but he's not known at all here. He has those kind of hospitals at Sector Cool Blue. Was it hospital? I can't remember, the Sector Blue or something like. They're about hospital space. I think they're quite old, but they're quite interesting. But what I did get recently, I read this one just to give you, if you're looking for stuff. There's a wee set of Penguin Classic, or not Penguin, wee Penguin science fiction books, and what I particularly wanted was science fiction writers from that I'm not familiar with at all. But the reason why I bought this one was it's a Strugatsky brothers book, and I'm at the minute I buy anything by them. But what we got was Andreas Eschbach as the hair carpet weaver. So he's German. This is a really good wee set of books, I think, because it's for. And then we have Angelika, let me see, Grodischer from Buenos Aires, Trafalgar. This is great, I think. Robert Shagley, where's he from? New York. Never read anything by him. Dimensions of Miracles, and these are all meant to be quite quirky books. We've got, of course, got myself this, which is 10,000 Light Years from Home, which is James Tiptree Jr., which is, of course, Alice Bradley Sheldon. And I'm really looking forward to tearing through this. It's just a good collection of short stories. And I've read a couple of things by her out of omnibuses and stuff like this, but the odd science fiction omnibus. But I'm looking, actually, and I've seen a few editions of this about. So looking forward to tearing through them all and getting a real sense of her as a writer, because I'd like to do a video on her. And I in particular think that the female science fiction writers are often underrepresented within the whole science fiction culture, but they're generally not talked about. We've had some comments about science fiction in the 60s and what kind of stuff. They're kind of ignoring all the female writers, which I think is a bit sad. Yeah, I love Jerry Cornelius, the English Assassin. Forever War is excellent, and if you get through the Forever Peace, I think the whole thing adds to it. And there's nothing about the sequels, Grimdark, I think, that detract from it. And if you understand Joe Haldeman, there is an absolute parallel to that book and his experience in the Vietnam War. And Halo Jones, I don't know if you've read Halo Jones, but I'd say Halo Jones, the Ballad of Halo Jones, is heavily influenced by the Forever War. I started Roadside Picnic thanks to your recommendation. Ursula Quayle going forward to have me very excited. It's a cracker, absolute cracker. Yeah, I've got I wanted to pick up. I have a very old edition of it's a hardback one, again, come over from America. When I was studying science fiction at the University of Liverpool, they used to get shipments of books in that I think the librarian had connections there, and we would get the odd nice edition, So just really Neuromancer, I think, it's about. And I have a couple of cyberpunk books, but Sean, they're books that I haven't got around to reading. So and it's probably one or two of each of the what you would call the main science fiction writers, Bruce Sterling and William Gibson and stuff like that. So I haven't got around to hitting them yet, and it's I am one of these people that has just an awful big reading list, and it's often it's a whimsy of which book I grab. I'm just if I grab a book, I'll go with it. It's up until I've been starting to do these science fiction videos, I haven't had any kind of particular structure to my reading. I've just been reading whatever I want and what I enjoy. So I tend to read my reading pattern tends to go science fiction, epic, ancient poem, that kind of thing, old world stuff. And then I tend to try and read something difficult that I would consider difficult, and then go back to something science fiction. That's kind of a bit of a pattern for me, I suppose. Yeah, and I like cyberpunk. And as I said, I did catch up with a film I'd seen before, but I watched Nemesis again. It's an old cyberpunk film. The other day, I thought it was a cracker. I just enjoyed it so much. I'm just dying. But in particular, the Japanese realization of cyberpunk, I think, I do love it, especially Ghost in the Shell, the original anime. I think is just brilliant, and I've always liked that. Sean says, "Me too. My to-do list grows faster than I can wish them." I know. I've got a ridiculous amount of reading to do. I'm the sort of person that depends. I read books different ways, and I also understand that my memory gets, as I'm getting older, isn't as good as it used to be. And there are certain books that I like to know well, if you understand me. That I don't like there to be any doubt in my either knowledge or joy and understanding of. And those are the books that I have a small cadre of books that I reread every year, or every couple of years. Um, Standalone Complex and Second Gig were superb as well. Yeah, I really enjoyed them. Would you like to see? I'll show you one of my guitars if you like, guys. I think you might see two of them here. But this one's called Antigone. What I thought I'd do was I'd pretend I was one of those deaf mutes. Well, there you go. This is my main stage bat that's badly worn down. As a concert classical guitar. Oh, but there's maybe, and oddly enough, there's my this one. I don't know if you can see it. This is more my steampunk guitar, by the way. And this is a guitar I sort of customized because it's got a few knocks. But this is one really to do with my hands are a bit damaged, and this is much easier as a folk guitar. But there we go. There's your laughing mom. Quite like that. No, I never put stickers on a guitar or anything like that unless the guitar is damaged. Usually to cover up a scratch. But if you play a guitar professionally, it's going to get knocked about a fair bit. But there we go. Rocker Boy's playing an important role in Cyberpunk 2020 tabletop. Oh no, I haven't seen that one. Is that a tabletop battle game or roleplay game? Possibly. The only again showing my age, the Cyberpunk kind of game that I know going way back was called what was it called? Shadowrun, I think. I think I played it a couple of times when it first came out, but that's I think there was a computer game, something like that as well. There we go. But yeah, Sean, Roadside Picnic. I'll tell you what. Once you get through that, the Strugatsky brothers. There's a serious one, but I'd call that proper serious science fiction. Very thoughtful. But some of their stuff's really kooky and funny. And Monday starts on Saturday. Yeah, I just thought it was hilarious. I just genuinely go and I don't know much about Russian society except through literature, if you know what I mean. And it's kind of Soviet era literature. And I just, I got a real sense of. So, and I've read a lot of. I have a wee compendium of Russian short science fiction from the Soviet era. It's very interesting, and if you could take it and compare it to, I must dig it out and see if I can find it for you. If you compare it to like American science fiction of the golden age of a similar era, the attitude of Russian science fiction is very, very different than American science fiction. And I don't know what you guys think, but I'm not, I'm from Northern Ireland, so I often have an outside cultural perspective on a lot of this stuff, I suppose. The Shadowrun computer game is the first RPG I ever played, says Dean. Hi, Dean. The Shadowrun Returns trilogy is great. I think, yeah, I do. Again, checking my memory, I used to be very much up until about, I suppose, till early 90s. You would have been very much into those kind of magazines, things like Dragon and White Dwarf and stuff like that. See why with Stanisław, he can be a bit depressed. It can be a bit. Stanisław, the Siberia, I think is hilarious though. Yeah, I don't. Oh, with that book I showed you there, what was it? 1 billion years to the end of the world. That has that kind of more of a darker Soviet, but there's Russian humor in it, and which can be quite. And I really enjoyed it once we got to the end. It was that one was a slow read for me. This one here we're just talking about 1 billion years to the end of the world, but all the rest of them I've bombed through. But I genuinely find myself stopping, having to think about them, and just getting to grips with the world of the Strugatsky brothers, which and there is real humor in the darkness of the Soviet era. I think but their books are quite kooky. Some of them, well, again, they're reasonably new to me, but I have read about 2 or 3 of them. I mean, a couple of them recently, but 2 or 3 of them a long time ago. And then again, my wife bought me a bunch of them. secondhand book list for Christmas. So my wife's actually reading the Dead Mountaineers Inn? I think it's called. There it is there. Bear with me 1 wee second. Oh, there we go. No, this is a very strange book, and it's fun, but it's the Dead Mountaineers Inn. It's kind of a deliberate science fiction piss take of a typical kind of murder mystery. It's bizarre. It's great. And I don't know if you can, that kind of Poirot type thing, if you know what I mean. It is, and it has a kind of and it's just bizarro, quite strange. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. So the wife's having a go at that at the minute. It's one of those things, and it is a kind of, it's a science fiction book, absolutely, but it's operating deliberately in another genre, and I quite like it. So there's Stanisław Lem's Siberia, I think, is very, very funny. And he can be, I suppose. Yeah, a lot of these writers have. There's a lot of dark writers in science fiction too, and the full heavy, I suppose. Like 1984 is not a pretty book to read. It's probably the most depressing book you could ever read. Is possibly 1984. But I read some stuff by a Japanese author recently, and it was very, very good, but depressing as hell. But you got to take that kind of thing. I suppose that's the whole point of catharsis, I suppose, and that people have stories to tell. As long as we're reading it and it's not happening to us, that there is a point in looking at something tragic or depressing. But that's the thing I have to teach my kids at schools before. The Northern Ireland English curriculum is appalling, but put it this way, it's all tragic, horrible stuff. There's not no funny shit, no Shakespeare comedies, no funny literature or anything, nothing. And as a classical word, tragedy and comedy, it's an entirely one-sided form of education. It's horrific. I feel so bad for them. And the whole trying to explain to them, that there are fun books out there and that they hate reading because what they're being given to read's a misery. I think the best ending in any book at GCSE is probably Of Mice and Men, and if that's the best you can read at the age of 16, I don't know, it would put anybody off literature, wouldn't it? There's just nothing funny, or even it's just all heavy tragedy. Very poor curriculum. Even some good. What we've got, just to catch up a wee bit here, guys. Any Haruki Murakami, Hardboiled Wonderland is a fun read. No, I haven't read. No, I've only read a few Japanese authors, and most of my Japanese reading would be in, I suppose, manga. But Mishima, I've read some Mishima. I'll tell you what, if I'll get that book for you tomorrow, Sean. I know where it is. It's out in the hallway. I was going about to run out, but as I said, my son's about. I'll tell you what, we're okay for a few minutes yet, but we'll have to wrap up shortly. But even some of the grimdark fantasy novels I've read, they have some humor, like First Law from Joe Abercrombie. Grimdark fantasy novels. I think you need humor in writing. It doesn't matter what your topic is. You can't. I'll tell you the thing that I use to teach my students with about ethos, logos, pathos, and bathos is it's the end of what do you call it? Is it the mist? I was a very depressed teenager, so the Northern English reading list suited me down to the ground. Right, well, my reading list at school is very different. I did comedies and all sorts. We did restoration comedy, Shakespearean comedies. Point is, we did comedy of some kind, there you go. But it's at the ending of The Mist, and I think somebody put the music. Hey now, and you get the full thing of why do you put the funny music at the end of The Mist when the guy's done everything so horrible? And it's to do with how you treat your audience. You cannot be that abusive to your audience with heavy stuff all the time. You have to relieve tension. That's what bathos is for. Um, but if you actually look at the end of The Mist and analysed it from the point of from the point of the audience in terms of the author's ethos, pathos, logos, etc., and his timeliness as well, and then the music is the youth of bathos at the end to relieve that suffering, then you get a cathartic experience. You don't come out manically depressed, but there's some films that they come out and there's no relief, and if you do that, then you go, if you get something that's just pure, full on, just bludgeon, 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 really, really hard to take, you're not going to come back and watch something else like that by that director, or even in an author's work. It's you have to, particularly with the persuasive argument. It's a good thing for authors to learn, is that how you treat your audience is partly how you present your story, and that you have to. It's part of wanting them to come back and read more. Frank Herbert understands this very much. He knows how to. He is smacking the reader quite a bit, but he really, he's given you plenty as well. He knows how to hook and not drive you away with anything. And I suppose how we started a wee bit today was talking about the difference between Dune being a complex book but not being complicated. I think, and that it is an easy enough book to read, and that you can read it in so many ways. But I would have to the one thing that I would recommend. I would everybody to read is this: Lone Wolf and Cub, Volume 1. You'd have 28 more to go. We've about 300-page books, believe it or not. And it would be my eyesight's getting bad actually. I have a few of these missing, so they're very, very small, incredibly detailed, and exquisite. Filler, what Frank Herbert filler? What is that? Sorry, give me back a bit of a context. Filler. Oh, sorry, Frank Herbert. Got you. Cool. Filler. What is that? Sorry, Carol. Yes. Very good. So I would call this one of Japan's finest cultural artifacts, literary speaking. I think this is beyond almost anything I've read. It's in the most impressive things I've ever read, and it's incredible. And again, like Dune and stuff like that, you have, it's one of those books where, you get the glossary of terms and everything. It's a really insightful series of books into Edo period Japan. And I absolutely couldn't recommend it more, But yeah, the English, I don't know. I've actually still got a lot of the books that I read from school, and I moved schools a lot as well. So read different books and different schools. So, but yeah, it's nothing like what it used to be. It's an appalling setup, I think. Just really miserable. The funnest books on the, I think, on the syllabus are Dracula and Frankenstein, and they're horrors, But they're the happiest books, I'd say, on the English literature course over here at the minute. I always think, of Mice and Men. The ending of that book's horrific. And what else is there? They're the perennials, aren't they? They're To Kill a Mockingbird, which I also think is an appalling book. Just as in what happens in it, I think it's well written, but I think the end of it's appalling and very depressing. So that's gone down a bit. We should all read. That's the thing: science fiction, comedy, something like that. A bit of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It's bizarre, Has anyone got? I'll take a couple more questions, guys, or a few more comments. We'll wrap it up. I'd say about 1:15 here. It gives about 10 minutes, so hope that's okay with you. But or just chatting away. Any other comments or anything, or any interesting point? As I said, we're open to all things science fiction, and it's even the terms of medium these days. It's incredible. The only thing I think is that we're getting a lot of science fiction out. There's a dilution of quality whenever you get mass production. It's the same for anything, I think. I don't know what you think. But yeah, I'm still really looking forward to seeing the film. And again, wasn't somebody said there's a couple of wee jokes with Jason Momoa? Is it with Timothy Chalamet, that kind of thing that are I think if they ad-libbed and put it into the film, it makes the audience laugh. Great. You don't really want to go and be miserable in the pictures or in the theater or stuff like that. If you want to be miserable, by the way, and read about being miserable, read. We were talking about Gerard Manley Hopkins' Sonnets of Desolation. By God, they'll depress the hell out of you. If you want to even make it even worse, read some of his nature sonnets and find out what a happy bunny he was just prior to this. It really puts the level of utter despair into blatant context, I suppose. As long as the film isn't Joss Whedon level quippy dialogue, yeah, there's something quite unrealistic about his films. I think that they attempt to make them fun, but they're, which I doubt. I'm not a big fan of Joss Whedon, and never really have been, and I don't really know too much about him. But I've watched Firefly, that kind of thing. But I'm not a Buffy the Vampire Slayer. This kind of that kind of TV doesn't really appeal to me in any way. So I can't really comment or anything. It's just not my thing, if you know what I mean. So I hope I'm not offending anyone. But yeah, it's one of those things for a long, long time. Wasn't there? There was a film of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, wasn't there? I think first, or maybe I'm thinking on something else. But there is a lot of this. There is a lot of this. What do you call, I suppose, around the golden age time science fiction coming out at the moment, hitting the TV properties, I suppose. Yes, Carol says, yeah, I expected to dislike one Jason Momoa scene because of how it's shown in the trailer, but the trailer lies. The same scene as in the movie is actually really good. Don't trust trailers. Oh, I couldn't agree more. Trailers used to be great fun. Trailers were an art form in their own self, I think, and they've become awful. And Whedon happens to be quite an ass to work with, fostering toxic work environments, filming Buffy. Yeah, I've heard that's the kind of thing that's been bantered about on the web there. Don't watch trailers laughing at it. But I don't know, from the age of video, trailers were great. And, it's the kind of, oh my God, there's it's a new film coming. Oh, brilliant. They used to garner a sense of, they would show you just enough and garner a real sense of excitement, I think. And the trailers didn't used to spoil anything for it. It's they used to be great, and even used to get those things. They would string a whole bunch of them together for Warner Brothers Home Entertainment, that kind of thing. Back in the 80s, and you'd see like films like at the time when Conan the Barbarian came out, the way they would, the trailer was really good and didn't spoil the film in any way. Angel is worth a watch by Buffy is about being a teenager. Angel is about the trials of being an adult. Its final season is amazing. My wife's quite into Angel. I think that's what I've caught the odd episode, but still not a fan. But that is it. I can't remember the actor's name, but I think it's probably because of the Bones connection. I think that she's a big fan of. Karen, 80% of the lines in the trailers are cut together from lines from different parts of movies that make no sense. Yeah, the trailer's job, it's kind of to sell you and entice you and to hook you and to make you want to go see this, but it's just meant to be just enough to entice you. I think, I don't know, I love, some trailers are fantastic and others are just Haven't seen Dollhouse, Sean, but the name itself sounds like a show. Sounds like a Joss Whedon show. All right, Dollhouse. I have a sense of it. Are there some kind of, I don't know? Are they some kind of female bred assassins? And I don't know. Haven't seen it at all. I caught like 2 minutes of it once. And went, what's this? And that's also, I kind of got just a, what you might call a sense impression of it. That's about it. But TV series that have been on, I suppose, recently, I'll go maybe since the 2000s, but I don't know. Farscape's been pretty good, and the Battlestar Galactica reimagining I thought was really good, and very hard to take in places. At some point, it got really depressing. But its emotional payoff in the last episode, I think, was excellent. So Farscape was the same, I think. And Farscape's Farscape's a fun adult show. I love Farscape. I remember, Sean, when it came out over here. Don't know if Dean can remember this, but on Northern Ireland it came out at 6 o'clock tea time. And then I think very quickly a couple of the episodes went down that Farscape road, and they shifted it to about 11 o'clock at night on BBC Two. And I think it had an inordinate amount of children watching it because of the Henson name attached to it, I think, which quickly stopped. Technology is invented to make it possible to reprogram people's minds. No, I said, Farscape is like, by the way, yeah, I just caught that, Dean. Babylon 5 reboot. Would be very interesting to see, and if J. Michael Straczynski's on board with it, the way it kind of ended wasn't how it was supposed to. And what I think was great about Bab 5 is that they were running with the computer generated technology at the time and working with it and evolving it. It ended up being a thing that all the other TV shows picked up. So I think Babylon 5 absolutely would benefit from that kind of thing. But it's a pity because we're going to lose those actors. We're not going to see the same people. And I think a lot of them are very good in it. I think a lot of people think Babylon 5 is a bit rubbish. I don't see how. It's a very good. It's got the air of the sitcom about it, but it's also very space opera. It's very good. I enjoyed it. Farscape was constrained by a limited budget, but a good cast. But look what they can do with a limited budget. That's one of these things, Grimdark, isn't it? Often the best work is where you've got the bare minimum to work with, and you can squeeze those performances out of things because you don't have 50 million to throw at something. I find it hard to believe that anything can be a failure if you throw 250 million pounds at it. But there you go, it happens, doesn't it? I still find it hard to believe that people can throw such money at a film anyway. I think, watch Farscape at the time, Dean says, but kind of bad sci-fi channel originals, laughing out loud. Yeah. Farscape, actually, at the time, I just returned to Northern Ireland because it was supposed, and since it had that sense about it here at the time that it was peaceful, which I think it was a bit of an illusion. But I actually went to a bar in Belfast to watch Farscape. I think the season 3 first episode or something, first couple of episodes, a special broadcast or something. But it's something to do with the TV that the bar had. And there's loads of people there for it, and it's the first time I've ever gone to a pub to watch the first episode of like an event of a TV show, and it was really good. And to me, it really had indicated for a while that I thought Belfast had changed. I was wrong, but there you go. Well, I'll tell you what, folks. Listen, Farscape Babylon 5. Once again, we're all over the place with this, but it's been good fun. Babylon 5 was ahead of its time in that it told a long story rather than serialized status quo each episode TV. It's the norm now, but rather than absolutely agree, Dean. We talk a wee bit about it in our A to Z, and it really was that shift towards story arcs and well-developed plot and stuff like that, rather than the single episode nature that was so useful with, or so not so useful, sorry, that we're so used to seeing with things like Star Trek and even Buck Rogers. The best you would get was a 2-part episode or something like that, But there we go. Well, listen, folks, it's getting a wee bit late here, so I'll have to say goodnight. And I think we're on with our first look at one of our Kwisatz Haderachs tomorrow. I'm not too sure if it's Leto the Second or Paul. I think it's maybe Leto the Second in terms of evolution, but I might be wrong. But we have a bunch of them to look at. So we'll see you all tomorrow after the show and after the video. And thanks very much for joining us. It's been a pleasure as always, guys. Thank you, and look after yourselves wherever you are. Keep yourselves safe. Thanks very much for joining us, and take care. Good night now.